What is life, if not an endless cacophony of emotions? Who am I? Why do I exist? Do I exist? Is my entire life just being a man, a personality, a human being, stuck behind your screen, living out my days, creating YouTube videos? Is existence to live one's life to the fullest, or to prove one even exists at all? But existence is for naught, if not for questioning existence itself. Or at least questioning whether or not anime girls exist anyway. This is a philosophical one, ladies and gentlemen. Prepare your brain hats. The NOexistenceN of You and Me is a metafictional, philosophical, visual novel that follows you, the player, as you explore the truth of both yourself and the world around you. Lead heroine Lilith steals the show as she takes you on a journey through various concepts and ideas, leading you to question yourself about her existence as well as your own. Can you learn to love her? And can you learn to love yourself? So let's jump right in. Coming across the NOexistenceN of You and Me was kind of like a happy accident. Here I am, browsing the Doki Doki Literature Club Reddit, and someone mentions, and I quote, "a game with meta elements DDLC fans might enjoy." And being the curious little goofy gooner I am, I had to check it out. Metafictional games aren't new to me. Since the DDLC craze, countless similar games have emerged, especially in the realm of visual novels. Heading straight to the Steam page, noticing the unique art style, and worrying I'd have to endure another butt-clenching horror hellscape, I foolishly dove right in. And it wasn't what I was expecting at all, in a good way. For the sake of us both, I'm just going to call this visual novel Non for the rest of the video. Non is not a visual novel that I'd call a horror game, at least not in the traditional sense. The story follows a blank slate protagonist, as well as Lilith, a whimsical girl who appears out of thin air to converse with you about various philosophical themes relating to the sense of self and those around you. I must already note that while Non does distinguish between the reader and the protagonist at times, sometimes that line is blurred in that she's speaking to the protagonist but making a point to the reader. This game is very metafictional, so fans of that will be eating good tonight. The story jumps around in nonsensical ways as a device and a metaphor to the philosophical ideas that the chapter wants to convey, and therefore there isn't a consistent story, at least until it all wraps up in the end. I really can't convey this point enough, so just stop the video and read this part of the Steam description to understand, because you won't understand. As for some claiming to it being a horror game, it's more about the psychological aspects of its themes, but even then, calling it a psychological horror game is a bit of a stretch. Philosophy is pretty scary though. This game does use meta storytelling elements like DDLC that its fans enjoy, but don't expect to plot anything like it. That's all I can really say without spoilers, but the question is, does it do it well? When all is said and done, Non's ideas are interesting and presented well enough, but fundamentally are a bit shallow. The sense of self, definition of others, relationships and subjectivity, order of the world around you, these ideas are all touched upon and presented by Lilith with a variety of silly and serious situations in a stereotypical visual novel manner. It's like the game representation of a Cliff Notes of philosophy for dummies. That's not exactly a bad thing, but it's clear they don't expect the reader to fully explore these ideas on their own. A good amount of the last chapter is essentially an answer sheet of what you were supposed to understand from the plot, amongst other things. Which, sure, but if you don't expect the reader to figure it out themselves, write it better instead of hand-holding them, because it comes off as almost insulting and dampens the intrigue of an otherwise enjoyable story. To be clear, I'm not saying it's written badly. In fact, it's written well enough that you can understand the themes of each chapter pretty easily, so it just makes the last chapter sound like an unneeded lecture. I find Lilith as a character endearing, and I mean, I guess I would, because most of the other characters are just inanimate objects. At times, the choices you make as the player and Lilith's dialogue come off as being like a drama club improv, but afterwards end up meaning more once the chapter's theme becomes more clear. Sure, both you and her know that she's simply an external being in the world of a game, but in that sense, it also makes it all the more enjoyable to enjoy these ridiculous moments with her. The metafictional elements of Non are pretty direct. Examples include ruining the illusion of the game world by zooming out and showing what exists beyond the background, the novel's use of choices, and at points, Lilith directly messing with the mechanics of the game. While not leaving much for the imagination, the plot uses these moments as a device to help the reader understand its philosophical points. If you were afraid that it was just one of those lazy metagames that go, "Hi player, just cuz," don't worry, it's not. I've also heard of this being called a deconstruction of the visual novel medium in some ways, but I think that's looking too far into it. Philosophy and metafiction are two of the scariest things that a visual novel can combine, because it's very easy for things to not make sense, especially if the novel spans a 5-hour length or more. However, the length to complete the entire novel is about 3 or 4 hours, and I think it perfectly stays its welcome in that time. If anything, I could have used a little more of Lilith's silly antics, but that's just me. I won't say Non is a generational masterpiece, but it certainly was the most interesting thing that I've read this year. If there's anything to say about Non, is that it's a very unique looking game. Its mainly white, black, and red color palette is very pleasing to look at. It also makes other colors stand out tremendously to the point where you'll associate characters based on the color of their eyes. In a way, it makes the game feel very surreal, which perfectly complements its overall agenda. The CGs in particular are very satisfying to look at in an almost relaxing way. I hope more visual novels explore creative ways in their presentation, such as this in the future. The soundtrack of Non is a complete experience, and it feels meticulously crafted to match the flow of the visual novel's pacing. It's not an understatement to say this is one of my favorite visual novel soundtracks I've listened to this year. If it's battling a demon king or Lilith putting on a live concert, you'll get swept up in the energy of the music. If it's playing around with Lilith or talking to inanimate objects, you might jam to a silly, bouncy melody. Or when you ponder life's existence, the tracks might even fill you with existential dread. I frickin' love this soundtrack. Lilith is the only character with voice acting, but she is fully voiced in Japanese and Chinese, which is neat. For the live concert scenario I mentioned earlier, there are even separate Chinese and Japanese versions, so the attention to detail is immaculate. As Lilith is the only character you'll be interacting with for the most part, the voice actors absolutely needed to pull their weight, and I'm glad to say they did. So, is the NOexistenceN of you and me worth your time? It's $2 frickin' bucks, man. I'd pay more for the soundtrack alone. And it's free! The story is interesting, the philosophical concepts it puts forth are intriguing, and if anything, just read this for Lilith, because Lilith deserves it. Sure, I don't think it's a masterpiece, and its writing feels hand-holdy at times, but in the face of it all, this is just an extremely high-quality product of which you'll find no other like it. So give it a try, but even if you don't, thanks for being here, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.